So today's podcast is on photography, and we're looking at specifically in-house photography and outsourced photography for design agencies, design communities, design studios. We thought this was quite apt because there's lots of it happening at the moment. We've sort of, in both our experiences, we know that a lot of design studios are reviewing their photography resource and whether they can use in-house. We've done it in the past many times, and I think you're going through something similar at the moment. Do you want to start this? Do you want to have a sort of
For
where
sure.
are you at with this? And we want to do a pros and cons, really.
I think it's a really interesting debate to have right now because obviously the photography space is changing with AI coming in, with content creation changing and the way that we produce media. And like I did write down that a dedicated photography studio space within a company or agency designed to handle brands' content creation needs is how I would describe a in-house content studio or an in-house photography studio. And yes, to that point, I'm lucky enough right now, and we've both been both sides of it. I love working with independent photographers. You and I both know, and we'll give him a shout out for this podcast, Ben Cole. He's an amazing photographer that we've worked with independently. But also by the same token right now, I am working at an agency that has its own photography studio, a senior photographer, a studio producer, and an on-site food stylist who is an ex-chef. We also have a double set for photography, so if we need to bring in extra people, we have a spare studio set to do that. It's primarily focused around food, beverage, although at the moment we're organising a shoot for babies, so that's not really one that I'm going to need to art direct, is it? But at the moment we had a bigger initiative last year into this year that was to really define what our photography studio stood for and how it's different to other models. And we're just about, in the next few weeks, hopefully by the end of April, we'll be launching a microsite for that photography initiative, where you can look at things like content bundles and packages to understand how we can help you create content that's not just one image. And I think that's an interesting thing that we can talk to, because photography used to be one shot, and now what we're trying to do as designers is think, when you take a shot, what other mediums and messages can it be used for? How can you repurpose that content?
Just tracking back a little bit, I just want to sort of define to those people who perhaps are, let's say, uninitiated. So how we use photography, we will use it for, certainly within our realm, it's for a lot of on-pack photography, and it also then potentially gets used for off-pack comms, so sort of POS, in-store, header boards, flyers, and of course now moreover being used on sort of social media. But the way in which we use photography will be, in the past, it would have been done externally. So we'd go to an external photographer, such as Ben Coles or whoever it might be, and an external photography studio who are specifically set up just to do photography, have multiple clients, multiple agency clients as well, and brands. But what we're discussing now is bringing that whole resource in-house. So you're bringing in a photographer with all his equipment. You're having a bespoke space set up, not just a space. So we can talk about this as well. What's required is a list of things. So when you're bringing that in-house resource, or bringing it into in-house, you've got to source your photographer, someone who's prepared to come potentially become an employee of your agency, which is, has its benefits and some downsides to a certain extent. But with it comes, you've got your space, your obviously your photographer, all the props that come with it. So every brand's going to have its own background, its own set of crockery, maybe, certainly in food. Then you're going to have the stylist that comes along with it. So the person who comes and makes the food look pretty behind the camera, in front of the camera, and all the hardware, because it's not always, the photographer might not have everything. You've got to bring in everything on top of that. So that's all your lighting, your camera equipment, or computer equipment for editing. Then you've got the editors. So the photographer does his bit, and sometimes they're skilled to do the editing. But if you've got a lot of work on, you need extra resource. One person's editing, one person's doing the photography, then you've got stylists. So it's a whole heap of things, but essentially we're reviewing whether it's going to be, if it's how efficient it is to bring this whole package in-house. Yeah. And this is what you're doing right now, isn't it? But you've done it for quite some time. Haven't you had that resource available to you already?
Yes, for all the time I've been at SGK, we've always had an in-house photography studio. It is one thing that makes us different to other agencies. Yeah. And to your point, there's for and against. So I'm not here to tout our own service and go, oh my goodness, we're amazing, this is the way to do it. Because to your same point, sometimes working with a freelancer that has experience in a certain niche. I know when I've worked on ice cream, we need a specific stylist that's used to working with the nature of ice cream. If you're doing a fashion shoot, so we just did a rebrand for a fashion client of ours, we didn't have the capability at the time to do a fashion shoot in-house. There were actually people already really skilled at doing that kind of on-site fashion work. So I think the benefits, I know we're kind of bouncing around a little bit here, but some of those negatives of using a big in-house studio are it becomes a bit more generic sometimes. The positive is you get brand consistency. If one person or one studio is doing all of your content creation, we did a whole rebrand for a brand of ours called Perino, and we were able to do everything from pack photography all the way through to their social media in store. In, say, you book a day or two's time, you can produce a lot of content, whereas often in independent studios, they'll charge you per shot.
Yeah.
So I think even the nature, and every photographer has a different model of doing it. Often as an agency, you tailor your model to the client and what their needs are. But definitely it will limit your creative if you're using an in-house studio. Like you said, if you've got an employed photographer and an employed stylist, unless you're able to bring in certain people, they're the people who are going to do your job.
Yeah. It's the space you've got available. So if you've only got a limited amount of space, that photographer can only produce a certain amount of variety of imagery. And if you've got a large cross section of brands, that some might require different lighting styles, different ambience. So you need a big space. So, and this is where you step into the sort of how big do you need your studio to be. Now, in the past, I've worked with, a few years ago, I was working with an agency, Coley Porterbell, I think, and we were doing some in-house photography for Tesco's. And they were using a studio called Hangar 7, which is in London near Farringdon. And it was colossal. It was like a conveyor belt of photographers. So there was about 5 or 6 photographers in this big sort of hangar, basically. Each of them with their own station, slightly different lighting setups, working in different categories. You know, we were doing biscuits to sandwiches, all different types of food products. But it was just basically a sort of conveyor belt. And they had basically a separate building, working shed that had all the props in it, because there were so many of them, different backdrops, different types of bowls, all the sort of stuff that add to the detail. And then, of course, you've got the skill set of the photographer. How extensive are they with their breadth of what they can do? Sometimes you have to go to location, you have to be on location. And now you're talking about socials. So you've got need to produce content. So it's not just, sometimes there might be a video alongside the still photography that's going to be used. So you're adding a whole list of things that need to be done by this photographer. So the in-house does have its limits when it comes to scale.
Yeah, and we're definitely producing a lot more video now that they can be slow mode or you can extract from for shots. I do think because we've had the photography studio way before my time, they've had it for so long, we have so many prop. We actually have a separate prop room at the back of the photography studio because of all of the things that they've had over the years. Sometimes clients ask us to hold props. We do work for Heinz. They have to your point, they have certain props that are theirs. Yeah. So we consistently have that. Same with Sara Lee, same with Ferrera. We have ones that belong to them, but are consistently use the same background or whatever. And that's why we moved studio, to have that space, because we were getting so much stuff. We didn't have the space capacity in the old studio. But and then to your point, you've got independent photographers. I think where they really come into their own is when you're niching down. When you have a certain category, topic, or way you want things shot, or a style. Because we might like to say, it's like creatives go, oh no, I'm really flexible, I don't have a style. We kind of do. It's like we might like to not admit it sometimes, but we still navigate it. We kind of gravitate to a certain style. And from what I've seen and experienced, photographers are the same. I've worked with James Murphy in London when I did a lot of Sainsbury's work. Some of the best, beautiful food photography you ever could have seen. And was quite a big studio with different photographers in it, but definitely food was their niche. They do the cookbooks for Rick Stein and stuff like that. And so you wouldn't go, I'm a fashion brand, I'll go there. Yeah. So it depends on who you are and what you need.
It does, absolutely. And this is where we start talking about, sometimes you could have a mix of both, I think, in many respects. And you might have your in-house photographer might have a certain skill set, and the skill set that you're going to require the most of, for example, let's say it's overhead food photography, which is another thing to talk about actually. But if you have a photographer who specialises, then that's what he does. And then suddenly you need slightly more ambient photography in a rich kitchen environment you can't replicate in a studio. Maybe you have to outsource it and you have someone that is more portable, let's say.
Yeah.
But something which I just touched on there, which I think is an interesting point, is the fashion or the trends which have come and gone, and overhead photography, and I'll be honest with you, 10 years ago, it was almost frowned upon to do it. You don't do editorial. No, it doesn't work on pack. It can only work in editorials or in magazines. And now it's a staple. Doing three-quarter photography can have its challenges. You know what it's like with perspective, and you're retouching three-quarter photography is a lot more difficult than overhead, where
Yeah.
you can just move things around. You can even comp together and bring some stock imagery into your real photography.
I think it followed a trend in packaging design where people wanted their packaging
Yeah.
to look like an editorial, and we started to shop on shelf as if it was a magazine spread. And some of those trends and the idea of you're setting the table rather than it just being a pack shot.
Yeah.
Then it's interesting right now because when you look at e-com shots, and we're doing a lot of work for e-com as well, but it doesn't necessarily come from photography. We might have a start of photography. It's always, if you look at an e-com being, if you go online to shop at Sainsbury's, Tesco, Coles or whatever, it used to just be a picture of the pack really small. But because now so many people are shopping online, people are realizing that little tile that you get, there's an opportunity to do something to inspire people to eat.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to sell. The interesting thing is now, if you load up most of the cereal brands, they all have a big bowl with their products in. It's all like big bowl photography. It all starts to look the same again.
Yeah.
So I think where good creative pushes its limits in photography is to go, what can I do in that space? And then from that space, because that might have been a pack shot, but it's how can you use it online? How can you use it in different spaces? And so I actually think there's a lot more upfront thought, as well as the technical skills that go into it. And that's where I do think sometimes if you're the designer and the photographer in the same agency, there's just a bit better discussion and alignment. Whereas we know what it's like. You work for an agency, but you have to go to another agency to do the photography. It just becomes a little bit separated, and then normally you then have to go to another one to do the artwork.
Absolutely.
And it's good because they're all experts, and you go, oh my god, and look, we did get criticism that our studio felt less personal. Whereas if you went to a smaller photography studio, you might have a couch in there, and you can sit there and watch them style it. Whereas our couches, we give people boardrooms or a couch, but it's not in the studio. And so it really depends what you want. But also by the same token, a lot of clients aren't bothering to come to shoots anymore. They just want to do it all online.
Yeah, that's it. That always sort of frustrate, well, me and photographers as well, when you're trying to get approval of a shot you've taken, and the client's gone off for a coffee or gone into a meeting and said, well, we're stuck here with the ice cream's melting, the pizza cheese is all over the place, we're going to have to do it again because we couldn't get approval in time. It does have its frustrations. But I think the challenge that you've got as an independent photographer is if you're as a studio, big design studio, and you offer an in-house photography setup, your premise is you're going to be offering it as a one-stop shop solution. So your price is going to be very cheaper than using an external photographer. For the most part, it would be. I think it depends, I guess, in many respects. But for the most part, you're going to be offering it as part of the package, and you're going to get a discount for using an in-house photographer.
Yeah,
I guess that.
sure.
Do you find that with your clients? Do you find that they?
I definitely think, and I did think about this before, like who would use an in-house versus a separate photography studio. And I think for retail and e-com brands, people who want not just a product shot, but a campaign visual or any digital marketing content, it makes sense to have an in-house studio because there's kind of a consistency of how that's produced and how those assets can be. I mean, we often will have a client in, and like I said, sometimes it's about how much can you get done in 3 days or a week. And there will be a ream of shots that we would probably produce in our photo brief. So there might be a pack shot, but there'll also be a ream of shots. How many can you get? And then it's going to be consistent because if you're going to use the same photographer and the same stylist, like we said, there is a consistency to their style. And we will often, with one of our hero clients, will specify the stylist they want to use. Lucky enough that we can bring in freelance stylists to use our space, and we do often if they're requested. And often because our main studio is full, so we use the other one. We actually have a really great freelancer who comes in to work with us. He used to work with us, he used to be our photographer, and then he went freelance. But one thing he's really good at is, to your point earlier, is drone shots and overhead shots. And so when we've worked with clients and we're getting a bit more diversity now, is it's not all food photography, some of it's on location. Our photographer in the studio doesn't have that experience, but we can bring in someone who does, who's learned to use drone photography and can do a completely different style of shot to what we need. But also a lot of freelancers, and this is an interesting point, and whether you agree or not, do freelancers need more skills? Because our freelancer, Andy, who comes in, he can edit, he can change things into video, he has AI skills, so he's a lot more adaptable to use.
Well, I think that's always going to be the case. Freelancers will always be a bit more flexible. Invariably, this is across all sort of levels of creativity. So the junior designer through to senior designers, they're going to have a limit to what they can do, just simply because of the work that they're working on. As a freelancer, you're working on an extensive range, generally a sort of a wider gamut of work, styling of work, brands. So your skill sets will be slightly broader than, let's say, an in-house. But I don't want to do them any justice. In-house, I mean, I've worked in in-house setups, I've also worked in others, and both have their merits. on many levels. And same with photographers. If you have an in-house photographer, he will begin to understand and know your brand and know what the boundaries are, what you should and what you shouldn't do in terms of the sort of the brand appearance. And they become a brand ambassador effectively. So I think the other thing I wanted to touch on is, and I only say this because I know that I've gone through this in the last few weeks, is stock photography and where does this leave? How does stock photography get used now? And I use it for comping stuff just to get an idea across. And you hope to God that they're going to say, yeah, we're going to shoot this. But sometimes they say, well, where did you get that shot from? And is it royalty free and can we use it? So basically, can we get it off Shutterstock? And sometimes it's a real kick in the teeth because you think, I was under the impression and I was led to believe that we were going to use a photographer for this one. And now we're having to use a stock photograph I use, which the lighting's going all over the place. You know, you might have 2 or 3 comp shots together. Some lighting's coming from here, some of the lighting's coming from here, shadows all over the place. And you want me to try and make it all look like it's in the same image. It's going to be a challenge here. My question is, where does this leave stock photography? Is there still a place for it? And do you still use it in your studio?
And the debate will go into another session of this when we talk about illustration as well, because I think that's an interesting topic for us to discuss with the same thoughts around it.
Very true.
So I think, look, this isn't new news to us, Shutterstock and clients wanting to use something cobbled together on Shutterstock as a final image and us trying to retouch the hell out of it to try and get the shadows in the right place. Often, actually, if it's a cobbled together image, by the time you buy all the licenses for Shutterstock, it's cheaper for us to just shoot it. And I do remember, I don't know if the rule is different now, but when I first moved to Australia, because in England, they wouldn't let you show on something on a pack that was not your product.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to Australia, and you were here too, there was a lot of work we would do for an old incumbent client of ours, and you were like, can you show a product that's not yours? And it's like, yeah, as long as you put serving suggestion or something at the bottom.
A little bit of copy at the end, serving suggestion, and you put anything on there. It can be anyone else's.
That blew me away. Like, I'm buying something in a shop and it's not even what's in
there.
there.
You're lying to your customers. Your consumer's going to surely understand that the peas that you've got on the shot on that plate aren't the same peas that are inside that pack.
And that was normally the smaller brands, in all honesty, and the bigger brands like your Kellogg's and your Heinz. We see it now, your Continentals, they're so picky about representing their product accurately, because ultimately your brand wants authenticity, and it kind of does need to have some level. I mean, it also means that when you're doing things like baby food, you can't actually put any real food on the outside of it, because it might be made with carrot and mash, but there's nothing but mush in there.
And even the values, isn't it, the percentage of carrot or potato in that product? If you've got this lovely big image taking up 50% of the space, and when you look in the ingredients list and it's 0.5% potato or 0.5% carrot, you think, oh, we've represented this incorrectly here. I think brands now are much more strict on how they represent their products and flavors, for example, on pack, and you like to think they don't want to disinform.
Absolutely, totally. So I think we're using, but then you've got things like we talked about AI before. So I think banks like Shutterstock, it used to be you'd spend hours, days looking for the right image, but actually now it can use its AI tooling to create it. We use it heaps for concepting. And then also, I mean, we often use our images, some of the AI tools for expanding images and things like that we do use. We don't normally use them for the final pack, if I'm honest. If it's food photography, we normally do shoot it. And then we might adapt the image, but it normally needs retouching somewhere or another. We might use AI to retouch it. We only really use Shutterstock for really obvious things, like we always have. I haven't really seen a massive change in that.
Well, little like cameo shots on pack. If you've got, for example, a blueberry flavored drink, and it just requires a little blueberry next to a call-out device, and yes, there's no point shooting one blueberry on a phone. You invariably just get a Shutterstock one and use that. I agree with that too.
That said, I mean, we've just done some really beautiful work for cheesecakes for Sarah Lee, and there were cameos on there, and actually it was cheaper for us because we're in the studio and we're shooting their cake. We just bought the cameos and shot them too. It was such a simple, easy shot, and easier than just using or finding the right thing on Shutterstock.
Yeah, agreed. It's funny, isn't it? The world is moving on, and even the other day I was reading an article about how, again, the use of AI. And how people now, certainly for their comp shots, you know what it's like when you're having to try and remove a watermark from a stock shot, Now you can use AI and just type into AI to please remove watermark, and it does it automatically. I used to spend hours removing those sorts of watermarks. The watermarks, for those people who don't know, are these just little sort of transparent stamps, if you like, that have been placed on an image all over to ensure that you don't. If you want to try and use it, it's going to be bloody hard. You've got to try and remove this sort of mark off the image, and it's enticing you to try and buy the full image, and it's going to be high resolution, obviously, and with no watermarks on it. But I've, in the last 20 years plus, I've spent many days, months removing watermarks of imagery just to get a concept across.
Yeah, removing
I think that's the other
watermarks
part was
instead
trying.
of searching through Shutterstock must have spent at least years of our life doing some of these things.
I think we used to try and remove it fundamentally just so you couldn't, so the client couldn't go and buy it somewhere else. And so
Yeah.
if they didn't know where it was from, you could invariably sort of charge the right amount rather than, or put your margin on.
It's always just to sell it in. I mean, some of our clients want to see exactly, even in a photo brief, exactly how their final. We do full pack layouts that look so much like the actual final thing before we've even shot it.
Yeah.
We spend so much time getting them perfect that actually tools that we've got now, like when you go into Photoshop and go just remove the strawberry from the front, it can do that.
Yeah.
Whereas we would spend hours photoshopping that stuff before. And it
Yeah.
is just people, but it also means that clients have got more demanding in wanting to see exactly what it's going to look like. It's not a, oh, this is kind of a mood board, this is kind of the vision anymore. They go, I want to see what it's going to look like.
Yeah, a slightly different conversation, but I know that certainly when we were both working together in Equator many years ago, 10 years plus ago, we would often try and set in a concept idea via a sketch. So you have to sketch out an image of how you want that photograph to look, and it allows your customer, whoever you're showing the client, to look at it and think, okay, I've got the rough idea where it's going to go, and I know it's going to look a lot better when you do the photography, as in it's going to look more realistic. When you start to show half realistic imagery which has been comped together, they buy into that idea so much that they want that concept, which invariably can be a complete shambles because it's a comped image of lots of different stuff together. So again, that's another challenge which photographers have, and we do, I guess you do as well, test shoots. Which photographers, the benefit of having an in-house studio is you can test shoot something quickly. So give us half a day, we can get that pack mocked up quickly and see how it looks. And the client will love that. This isn't the real shot. No, it's just a test shot.
Yeah, we do an awful lot of test shoots and pre-pros to make sure everyone is aligned and on board and all that kind of stuff.
That's a big selling point. So, Lee, so at the moment then, your photography studio, you are, because you obviously service your current clients.
We do. So obviously, we do a lot of design that then leads to photography, but we also externally, we also work with other agencies sometimes to do their photography.
Yes, of course.
I mean, we're doing a lot of content at the moment. Like I said, for Heinz have become a really consistent client of ours where they'll need marketing shots.
Yeah.
So a different type of content creation that we're doing for them, a very specific way that they want it. So we haven't necessarily done pack designs and then we shoot it for the pack design at all. It's just marketing and they'll have very set ways they want it. We actually have become really adaptable because there are then also pack designs that we've designed from start to finish that we know, and we've done the photography briefs for all of those. So some of it's really controlled, but then there's the flexibility of having external people come into our studio.
And that comes with scale, doesn't it? I think the bigger you are, the bigger the photography studio you can set up in-house, and the more that, we used to talk about tier 1 and tier 2 agencies. So you have the tier 1 agencies producing great content, but they aren't necessarily of the scale where they have the in-house photography studio capacity. So if you're doing the activation or the rollout of those concepts, even let's say tier 2 or whatever you want to call yourselves, you can then sort of say, listen, we don't mind someone else doing the sort of top end creative work, and we're more than happy to take that work and roll it out because we know that we can then keep it consistent. They provided you with 5 SKUs of how that pack might look, but then we've now got to roll it out across sort of 20, 30, 40, 50 SKUs. We will run with it because we've got the styling now.
Absolutely.
I think, and I see that as a huge benefit. But I think what I was trying to touch on is the fact that you can then now go out and offer that service independently and say, if we don't have to do the design work, that can be something else. We will just do your photography if that's what you want.
Which is exactly what the initiative is that we're going to build a microsite for. I'm going to get my hands dirty building.
So define a microsite.
So the agency we used to work for, Equator, they have a microsite. They have Equator, that's their design, their overall holistic everything they do. And then they have a separate Equator photography site.
Yeah.
So it only talks to, so we have our big SGK site and you go, what do you do? We're getting way better at it, and with the merger it will become clearer, but specifically tailored to photography. And we've put together some content packages because we realized that one shot isn't enough, and that actually you might want 10 shots or a day's worth of a certain studio time, styling time. So we've kind of bundled things together, because more often than not, a brand doesn't just want one image. They want images that live online, unpack, and in all of their social media. So we've started to bundle together those services to make it more cost efficient. What can we do in a day? If we're owning your brand for a day, what can we do? And then we're also going to use that microsite to showcase some of the great work that we've done across different categories. So there will be some
So define what a microsite is, Liz. This is just
it's just a smaller version of a website.
an offshoot website.
Like a less than 5-page website.
Yeah, but then it's showcasing other things you can do and what you can provide.
It will showcase the niche photography side of our business,
Yeah.
but it won't talk to our design. There'll be no design work on there.
Sure.
There might be images that have been used in design work or that have been shot for work that we've done. Purely the microness of it is it zooms in, it focuses in on our photography offering.
Yeah. I love it. I love the idea of it. I think the whole concept of having, I don't need to be sold an in-house photography. I understand what the benefits it brings. And of course, it does matter to the caliber and the quality of the photographers you've got. And that's a big thing. You need a photographer who has an extensive range of what they can provide. And I've worked with some fantastic photographers, some of whom, obviously Ben, we know. I really enjoyed, in Equator, I worked with Gavin Bond, who was another photographer who, and they all do, when they're the senior photographers in these studios, they generally have got a lot of experience. But it was so nice to work with someone who you can come up with different brands. You've got a concept which you've sketched out, but they can sit and work with you, and we can get this, we can improve on this, we can get it better.
Yeah.
And those are the people I love working with.
I love that. And that's just like working with great creatives, right? It's finding people that you've taken my vision and you've given me a spin on it and you've made it even better. Because they're creative in their own right. Photographers are creative in their own right. And yeah, I agree. I love that we have an in-house photography studio. I think our photographer is amazing. I have also worked with some independent people. The whole experience is different, every one that you go to. So whether it's Ben Cole, whether it's, we have a few that that you and I have worked with in the past, and they're all very different, but they excite you differently as a creative, and the way they see your vision gives you a different level. And I think perhaps it's great to use in-house photography studio for consistent content. There also might be big advertising campaigns that you go, I want a niche studio that only does this style. And you kind of want an edge to it. And so you use those for that edge. And I think that's cool. I think they all have different roles and purposes. I'm not saying, we do everything, because there are some things that I would love to work with other types of photographers on.
It becomes part of a what's the word? An attraction for the customer, of your client. If they can spend a day in your studio and you want them to be taken on this journey and also to enjoy their day, and it becomes enjoyable too. They want that experience to be repeated. So each time they come in, they want to have the nice pastries and the nice room to sit in and do their work whilst they're waiting. Can I approve this shot yet? Is it ready?
They do. Everyone always says, how much they love being on photography shoots, and also art direction as well. Art direction is a lot harder, even harder if you've gone to a photographer that you've never worked with before. So you get a bit of a way of working and how to say what you want. If you're the art director and you go into an external studio, actually, I don't really like how you've done that there. It's not really my creative vision. It's how you work with those people as well, and it helps if you know them really well, because then you can just say what you think without offending anyone.
Yeah.
But also someone might add that layer that you never thought of. So this, again, there really is for and against. I love it when we get freelance in. I love a photographer, but I also love the opportunity to work with different ones. So I think there's plus and minus.
I agree. I think just rounding this pod up, I think in summary for me, I think a bit like our discussion with AI the other day, it's horses for courses. And I think it's only going to get more popular that studios, design houses, design agencies will attach themselves to this resource. Again, not necessarily become an in-house, might be attached to them closely where they've got a consistent relationship with them, where there could be a neighbouring building or within the same city, but it's something that they use regularly. But it's a part of one service. So the one-stop shop service, I firmly believe it has its place. But I also think those independent photographers will always also have their place, because they offer the flexibility and the difference of opinions as well. Some coming in, let's say different creative input. Yeah,
I think that's definitely where you can have the ability to push creative. It all depends on the people. No, I agree. That's a great summary, Mark.
So when's your in-house? When is your microsite going to be up live?
We are building it next week. One of my designers and I are going to build it.
Brilliant.
And we're just using a template. It's just a test to see how this works. It's a huge initiative for us. Even to get the sign off for us to produce a microsite is kind of like, because none of the other sites have done that. So we're going to do it before the merger happens. And
No, I understand.
it should go live by the middle of April. So
Excellent.
watch this space. Maybe by the
Fantastic.
time we actually publish this podcast.
So the benefits of someone coming to you, photography is the Microsite, what do they get? What will they get from
So we
SGKS?
SGKS,
What will
whatever
they
it
get?
is.
What will they get from you they wouldn't get from an independent?
So we talk a lot to the whole brand journey and how we can
Yeah.
customize the content for what you need. We're not just giving you one shot. We're talking to how you can use a series of shots in different capacities.
Yeah.
And I think about that from design. I think designers, we spoke about this before, designers now can't just design for a pack or a billboard. We need to design for where does this live in all of these different worlds. And so I think we definitely have the consistency. We have an absolutely amazing prop room as well. You could get lost in it. Built it over time.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we're better than independents, we're just different. And for our clients, the control over consistent content and actually even the speed of us booking it in the studio, we're pretty efficient. And because we have a studio producer on site, she's always able, we've got the 2 sets, she can juggle around. Okay, I'm already full up capacity on Studio 1, but I can bring in a person who's right for your brand to fill up Studio 2. So it's pretty adaptable, and that comes from being part of a big business because you can put out that cost to get the people you need.
Yeah, love it. Love it. A big fan of it. And funny, you touched on that. I used to go and sit in the prop rooms of our photography studios and get lost in, I'd love this at home. It'd be, whatever it might be, the perfect knife or the perfect fork. Oh my God, now where's this been found? We've only got one of them. Don't lose it. And that belongs to this brand, so don't lose it because they will be
They've all
really
got
big.
like the posh crew set bowls and everything. And I always
Yeah.
say to them in there, I joke and go, I don't even have 2 of the same thing in my kitchen.
I know. That's all
It's a
about
fun
setting
one.
up the ideal studio. Brilliant.
Good chat, Mark.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Lise. This is fantastic. And we shall see you, everyone else, very soon.
See you soon.